Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Adoniram Judson Gordon Memorial Speech Competition, otherwise known as the JUD Talks. This is our 6th annual JUD Talks tonight. We're so glad that you could come and join us. I'm Dr. Christy Gardner. I'm an Associate Professor of Communication Arts, and I serve as Chair of the Department of Communication Arts, Theater, and Art here at Gordon. Communication Arts is all about the art of communicating well. That's what we do here at Gordon, whether you're in film or journalism or public relations and strategic communication or social media content production or broadcasting or podcasting or public speaking. That's what we do here at Gordon, and it's all about telling redemptive stories. That's what our founder was about, A.J. Gordon. As you know, he was a preacher, he was a hymn writer, he used his liberal arts education, put it to good use in communicating the good news of the gospel. And we're going to hear some of those redemptive stories tonight. So thank you for coming out and encouraging and supporting your fellow classmates. With that, let me turn it over to my colleague, Associate Professor of Communication Arts and Director of this year's JUD Talks, Dr. Chris Underation. Join me in welcoming him.
Thanks, everybody. So tonight, you're going to experience some things maybe you've not really experienced before. And these are ideas. Maybe you've thought about some of these things. Maybe some of them are ideas you haven't thought about, but these ideas might be things that sort of spark a And you'll get the opportunity later tonight, if you wish, to ask questions of the speakers. That will happen while the judges are tallying up the points that they've awarded for various facets of the speech. For those of you who are watching us online, I have a little bit of information for you. We have here in the hall these programs, and you have this program available to you online at gordon.edu/JUD Talks. And you can access it and download it there if you wish. You'll also have the opportunity later to vote for the Audience Choice Awards, and you also will have the opportunity, if you wish, to ask some questions of the speaker too. So without further ado, let me introduce our MCs tonight, Nick Markham and Virginia Vieno, and we are now underway for JUD Talks.
Hi, I'm Ginny. I'm the winner of the 2022 JUD Talks.
And I am Nick Markham, and I'm the winner of the 2021 JUD Talks. And what you just saw was what we call
the winner's handshake. And the winner of tonight's competition will have a chance to learn the winner's handshake.
But more importantly for tonight, we have some cash prizes on the line for our contestants. So the third, second, and first place winners will have a chance to win $100, $200, and $300 respectively.
We have been working so hard and are really looking forward to tonight.
Yes, we have been dreaming about this day for months and been working for weeks on this presentation really hard. And with that,
Wait,
who
Nick,
is
Nick,
ready?
Nick, Nick. Can I have the clicker, please? I feel like we've messed up somehow. We haven't really communicated our purpose very well.
What do you mean?
Can we start over? Can we start over?
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, let's review this.
Okay, hold on.
Let's go back.
Okay. Oh, wait. Oh, that's us. No.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'm Ginny Vieno.
And I'm Nick Markham.
And we'll be your hosts for the 2023 JUD Talk competition this year. I would like to start off tonight with what I think is a relevant quote from the illustrious Stephen Fry, who you might know from as the narrator in the audiobook, A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on Audible, not sponsored. He says, "A true thing poorly expressed is a lie." What we have for you tonight is a lineup of students who are here to express true things to us in ways that we can relate, enjoy, and just have a good time, and even put into our own lives practically. So I invite you to join us as they express truth excellently.
Yes, and hopefully as you leave tonight, you will leave with perhaps a new and fresh perspective on these things that our speakers tonight have to talk about. And they hope to inspire you with the ideas that have been prevalent on their minds and hearts. So with that, of course, this is a competition. So with the competition comes judges, and we have 3 judges here to introduce to you tonight. The first of which we'd like to introduce is Elise Lasardo. Elise Lasardo graduated Gordon last year and was also a finalist in last year's JUD Talks, and she is currently an award-winning performance theater instructor and is currently a biblical teacher. So give it up for Elise Lasardo. All right, and unfortunately, Amanda Lane could not be here tonight because she is sick. So in her place, we have Jill Rigotti. Jill Rigotti is an adjunct professor here at Gordon College who teaches some public speaking classes. So we got Jill Rigotti. Let's give it up one more time. And last, we have Jacob Padilla. Jacob Padilla graduated Gordon College in 2017 and currently runs his own filmmaking company, Lunchbox Productions. So give it up for Jacob Padilla.
And finally, before I get started, I want to forewarn you of an obligation that you will have following all of our speakers, and that is the Audience Choice Award. So keep an eye out for your favorite speaker. You will have an opportunity to vote for them at the end of the night.
All right, and with that, who is ready to get started tonight?
All right, first up, we have Michel Bayarjargal, a double major in philosophy and economics, with his speech, "Cars are not good for cities. Cars are the most convenient way to get around in America, but car-centric urban design makes our neighborhoods more dangerous, isolating, and wasteful. What might communities built for people rather than for cars look like?" Give it up for Michel.
It is a Friday afternoon and you are about to clock out of work because you are hosting a game night at your house later that evening. Work is in the big city, but you live in a quiet suburb, far removed from all the pollution and all the noise. Unfortunately, this does mean that you have a 45-minute commute to work and a 45-minute commute on the way back home as well. That is if you can avoid all the rush hour traffic. Stay behind just a few minutes to finish one last assignment, and you and the 1,000 other folks who had the exact same idea will suffer the consequences. A 45-minute commute becomes an hour-long commute. A drunk high schooler rear-ends a family station wagon a mile ahead, and suddenly that hour-long commute becomes an hour and 15. Your car is now a crawling tin can on the road. Everyone's car is a tin can on the road. Your car can do many things. It can hold your drinks, it can fan you with cool air, it can play you music to entertain you, and if you're wealthy enough, it can even soothe your agitated spirit with aromatherapy and massage seats. But the one thing your car can never do is get you home any faster than the guy in front of you realizes the light turned green 3 whole seconds ago. Tonight, I want to make the case that for you as an individual person, cars are not good for you. Cars are not good for your quality of life, they're not good for your neighborhoods, and they're not good for your family or your friends. I am not going to be talking about environmental or financial concerns. Perhaps those aren't your priorities. Maybe you have the financial means to purchase and maintain a car, and maybe you're not all that environmentally aware. But that doesn't matter for my talk, because my talk is about you and your quality of life. According to the United States Census Bureau, the average one-way commute time of Americans increased from 25 minutes in 2006 to 27.6 minutes in 2019. That is an over 10% increase in just 14 years. The same report also found that just 5% of American commuters regularly use public transit. Where is all that extra time being spent? Well, The sight of a clogged up highway is one that's familiar to all of us. And the issue with highways and commute times is that the more of them you build, the worse traffic gets, because highways are an example of induced demand. The more lanes you add to the highway, the more drivers are incentivized to stick to the roads. Building more highways will never be the solution. But if you think about it, your car is actually chronically underutilized. Consider, for example, the 27.6 one-way commute time and multiply that by 10 to get your total commute time for a week for a 5-day work week. Now, let's double that number just to include all the other trips you might make in a week. That still puts you only at 9.2 hours of driving a week. But then, consider that there are actually 168 hours in a week, and you realize that your car only ever spends less than 5.5% of its entire life actually being driven. So where do cars go when they're not being used? They take up lots of space in parking lots. This image that I took from Google Earth of the North Shore Mall shows that when you actually trace out the development footprint, you realize that parking space makes up most of the development footprint. And this is bad news. According to a study by Tischler and Associates in 2002, big box stores and shopping centers are actually a net drain on municipalities because although their big footprint purports to increase more traffic and more customers, they're actually a drain because of how expensive the parking lots and the overall footprint are to maintain. Think electricity, think water, and then think maintenance for those roads and parking spaces. It's not good business. But cars just don't take up a lot of space, they also take lives. As the Massachusetts Driver's Manual puts it, motor vehicle crashes are the #1 cause of death of children and young adults in America. 1 in 3 Americans will be injured or killed in a car accident at some point in their lives. Now, the Driver's Manual actually understates the problem. This isn't just the leading cause of death for young children and young adults. It's actually the leading cause of death for all Americans across the board, aged 1 to 54. In 2021, over 42,000 people died in motor-related accidents. Compared to our neighbors across the pond, America suffers from an abysmally high level of traffic-related deaths per million people. Even the worst country in Europe, Romania, with 96 deaths per million, doesn't hold a candle to Wyoming, which is the worst state for traffic-related deaths, at 254 deaths per million. Now, it's no wonder then that the old adage, kids don't play outside anymore, actually holds some truth to it. According to a survey by the Canadian footwear company Kamiq, respondents said that children spend today about 35% less time outdoors than their parents did. Is it all that surprising when a lot of children's outdoor environments look something like this, or even worse, something like this? How can parents reasonably feel comfortable letting their children be outside in these kinds of environments? It's also no surprise that for many teenagers across this country, getting a driver's license is the first ticket to true freedom, because without a car, teenagers have no mobility. Now, it's not just that cars take up a lot of space and that they're bad, they're taking up even more space and they're causing even more accidents. According to market research by J.D. Power, over 80% of new vehicle sales in 2021 consisted of trucks and SUVs. Sedans and family hatchbacks actually account for a rapidly diminishing proportion of the market share. Now, according to research conducted in Michigan, at a collision speed of about 20 to 39 miles per hour, 30% of SUV collisions with a pedestrian resulted in a pedestrian fatality, compared to only 23% of car crashes. But when that number goes up to a 40 mile an hour collision, all recorded SUV crashes resulted in a pedestrian fatality, compared to only 54% of car crashes. The fact is, the bigger and heavier the car, the bigger and worse the collision rate and traffic fatalities. This is in conjunction with marketing that likes to present big trucks as being the, let's face it, traditionally masculine option for a car, evoking imagery of the countryside, lumberjacks, construction workers, and the like. But market research also shows that most light truck purchasers aren't actually rural workers. They're suburbanites who regularly commute into cities to work. Can we reasonably fit more and more large trucks into the tiny lanes and parking spaces in cities? Is that really the best use of our space? So I want you to think for a minute about how else we could engineer our urban spaces to be more people-friendly and less car-friendly. And if I told you the answer to that was public transit, you'd probably think of the unwashed masses huddling into poorly maintained trains and buses. And while this is technically true and that public transit is critically underfunded in America, it didn't always used to be this way. Before the 1960s, streetcar networks that make cities like San Francisco seem so unique to us today were actually commonplace in virtually every US city. The fact is, America wasn't built around cars, and that's why we are where we are today. America was demolished for cars. Before surface parking lots and arterial highways cut through historic downtown districts, streetcar networks used to provide foot traffic so that people could easily access their offices, places of offices, their homes, their shops, and their businesses. Downtowns used to thrive on this kind of foot traffic. But when your downtowns are gutted for cars, there is no longer any of this kind of lively interaction. Now, zoning laws in America divide up urban land into generally three types of land use. We've got commercial districts, residential districts, and industrial districts. And while zoning laws do have a legitimate purpose, the issue is that zoning laws throughout most of America make it illegal to build anything other than single-family housing units and the big box retail centers that we described earlier. And the problem with this is that it creates suburban sprawl where people live, work, and play becomes further and further spread out to the point where it becomes absolutely necessary to have a car, because otherwise you wouldn't get to any of your amenities or services or places where you needed to go without one. But there are alternatives. And I want to present to you today the idea of a mixed-use development. Rather than dividing up where things are, mixed-use development actually combines together lots of commercial and residential uses so that, hypothetically, where you work, where you live, where you play, and where your family and friends are never more than a 15-minute walk or a bike ride or a streetcar ride away. Or, even crazier, imagine if getting to the next town over didn't require you to drive, but you could just take a train there instead. Would you ever really need to drive if everything that you needed on a regular basis was so close to you? Have I described some kind of impossible utopia? I don't think so. Pretty much all cities throughout human history have been built on mixed-use developments. And the fact is, they're better for you. Studies show time and time again that walkable neighborhoods are associated with lower levels of heart disease, higher levels of social connectedness, and higher levels of physical activity. Think about it this way. If you are regularly walking everywhere you need to go, the number of face-to-face interactions you have with other human beings is likely to be much higher than if you zip around in a personal vehicle. Now, I want you to think about all the information that I provided you today, and now imagine what your commute home on a Friday afternoon could look like. Instead of rushing to beat the traffic, you don't have to worry because a streetcar goes straight from your office to your home every 5 to 10 minutes. You don't have to worry about colliding with a car in front of you because you're not the one in charge driving. Instead, you can unwind with your favorite movie or your favorite book. And the best part is, once you get home, you don't need to allocate extra time to your commute just to visit the grocery store or whatever your nearest strip mall has, because instead, there is a grocery store in your apartment complex. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about what your life could look like if you weren't chained to your car. And I want everyone to realize that the sooner we realize we don't have to zip around in our personal pods, the sooner our engagement with our communities can be a lot safer and a lot more fulfilling. Thank you very much.
All right, next up, we have Anne Griffith, a psychology major with a minor in art. With her speech, "Sustainability is the New Black, an alternative to fast fashion." This speech addresses the dangers of overconsumption and fast fashion and presents thrifting as a sustainable alternative. Please welcome Anne Griffith.
My mother owns $6,000 worth of mice figurines. She has them because when she first got a job and started earning a paycheck, she would go to this little small business and buy one for herself as a reward. And she did this about 112 times. And actually, the only reason why I know about them, but this cute, inspiring story, is because we actually found them sitting away in my grandparents' basement. And we had a flood. And my mom calls me, and she's like, "Are my mice okay?" And I'm like, "What mice?" And that proceeded to be a 3-hour phone call where I was trying to get her to see that even though her emotional attachment was very real, that these mice shouldn't just be sitting away in a basement rotting away. And finally, I got her to give them to me. And she said, "This shows how much I love you because these are my prized possessions." Now, this doesn't apply just to little clay rodents. I grew up with a family of hoarders, and I lived in that situation for 13 years. And I had this silent mindset that happiness came from our things, and that to be happy, we had to keep acquiring new stuff, and that memory and meaning was attached to things that were old, broken, or unnecessary, no matter what. Until I came to Gordon, I thought excess and waste were just normal. That's how everyone lived. And my closet, I had 2 closets in my single dorm filled with clothing I couldn't even wear. And I had boxes upon boxes full of junk I thought I needed to keep. And I was realizing I was too embarrassed to have anyone visit me because other people didn't live like this. Now, freshman year, we had a warm clothing drive for students, and I remember seeing the empty box in Lane, and I'm thinking, here I am with 4 coats that no one's wearing. Why do I have so much when others have so little? And at that moment is where sustainability truly entered my line of sight. I ended up taking 3 huge sacks of things to Savers and donating it all because I realized I wanted to help other people instead of collecting for myself. Now, our society in its current position is geared towards fast, easy, and cheap. I was raised by my parents to value these things, especially the affordability aspect. Now, the problem with this is that the devaluation of products and services and overconsumption arises from it. Now, fast fashion serves as a microcosm of this. Now, fast fashion, as defined by Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is an approach to the design, creation, and marketing of clothing fashions that emphasizes making fashion trends quickly and cheaply available to consumers. Now, many people, including myself, have shopped at or do shop at fast fashion retailers like Walmart, Primark, H&M, Shein, and Forever 21. Now, it is not inherently bad to want to shop or to want to fit in or look good or purchase within your style and budget. But the problem is these companies, they want people to think they need to fit in, and they sell an ideal. The cool girls have this, the hot boys shop there, and the really awesome people have what's in this YouTube video of a $500 haul. But dare you be an outfit repeater or wear the same pieces over and over again, you look cheap, you look poor, you're a minimalist with no style. Now, like my family, I see the same tenets of hoarding in this mindset, but it's hoarding without the storing. Now, we get what we want fast, and we don't want it, we just get rid of it. And we don't even get the chance to have an emotional attachment. We just get addicted to the rush of retail therapy and of having something new, just like how my family was. Now, the media. The media promotes trends, and these trends can happen from month to month, for even week to week. Now, consumers, to keep up with these trends, would to keep purchasing new things at a constant rate. Now, imagine everybody does this. In America alone, the Environmental Protection Agency reports that Americans generate 16 million tons of textile waste in 1 year. Only 14.5% is recycled, and 4.3% is exported overseas, and the rest of it is absolutely destroyed. Now, this is just in America, and if you attach this to a worldwide scale, these numbers become unimaginably large. An international example is about the Atacama Desert in Chile. Now, the Atacama Desert is the driest desert in the world, and it has become a dumping ground. 59,000 tons of material and fabric are ending up in Chile every single year. So things made in China and Bangladesh that are passed through Asia, Europe, and the United States, and then finally being resold around Latin America. And everything that's not sold ends up here. Now, the huge problem with this is that none of this is being tariffed or paid for to be removed, and it's sitting there leaching chemicals into a really delicate ecosystem. Okay, why should we care? Who has the power to change this? I think, for one, that celebrities, who are usually incentivized by popularity or monetary gain, do promote fast fashion and overconsumption. But I think their power in the public eye can be used towards good and towards sustainability. Now, many people already have been living in a sustainable way because they have to, before this became a hotly debated and discussed topic. Now, people living in poverty or just don't have simply the excess resources to keep buying new things had to source them secondhand or make their items last. Unfortunately, a lot of stigma has been attached to this. A research study in 2021 in Indonesia by Lestari and Asmarani found that there was still taboo in Indonesia to wear secondhand. However, during the COVID-19 economic crisis, the youth actually popularized thrifting through social media. So this proves that there is hope to change a harmful stereotype. I myself have even noticed at Gordon a mindset that's geared towards sustainability. Most of my outfits are thrifted or secondhand, and I'll tell people it's thrifted, and they'll look at me and they'll give me a smile and approval, and sometimes they'll even say their outfit is too. Now, from another standpoint, an economic standpoint, this study also cites IBIS World, and that $14.4 billion annually are brought in by the thrifting industry. Now, this proves that there's a profitable, economic, safe option for people to use. It can create jobs, it can create community, and the more and more people learn to donate and thrift, the more it will become accessible. People shouldn't be judged on their brand names or the cost of their sweater, and people shouldn't be judged or their self-worth defined by their stitches or their riches. Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21 states, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, your heart will be also." We, as a community and as a body of Christ, have a responsibility to one another. We have a responsibility to build one up another in faith. And by using our agency and our free will towards love and care, there's definitely things we can do to stop overconsumption and to slow down this process. For instance, advocating in the media for companies to pay workers living wages, using our dollar power and not choosing to shop at fast fashion whenever able, advertising slow fashion and small business, reusing what we already own and what we buy, recycling, whether by upcycling or at a facility, secondhand purchasing, especially for economically costly materials like fur and leather, and also, finally, practicing gratitude for one another and for God's provisions. We never have to spend any money or look any certain way to be loved and saved by Him. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Next up, we have Willian Lionetta, a psychology major, with his speech, "You Don't Look Disabled, My Experience Living with an Invisible Disability." His speech critiques some of the ways in which disability is portrayed by the media, some of his experiences living with a disability, and how faith in Christ has given him hope and a sense of meaning.
All right, so for just a moment, I'd like you to close your eyes and I'd like you to picture someone with a disability. So I'd like you to keep your eyes shut, but I'd like you to raise your hand if the person that you are picturing is someone who is in a wheelchair. Is the person you're picturing unable to live on their own? Is the person that you are picturing affected in some way in which they are not able to find employment or finish high school? All right, you can open your eyes. The majority of these stereotypes are some of the media's depictions of disability. And while there are physical and intellectual disabilities, there are a lot of disabilities as well, which are not as talked about, including those who may struggle in ways in which we do not know, as well as those who come across as nerdy or unsociable. So what do people not realize about disabilities? According to the CDC, it is the largest minority group. Most people will be impacted by one, whether it is temporary or permanently. And people may act or look like they do not have a disability, even if they do. And early intervention is crucial for people to get supports. So some of you may be wondering, why do I think it is important to talk about disability? Where would I impact or see someone impacted by disability on campus? And at least from my experience, there are people who are on campus who have a disability who may not disclose it or may not talk about it because of some of the things they have gone through. However, it is important to acknowledge that these people also bring strengths and also bring opportunities that they would not have brought if they did not have a disability. So I'd like you to take a moment and think about the people on these lists. These people, for a moment, may not seem like they have a lot in common, although all these people either have or were suspected to have some sort of disability. So for those of you who may be watching who have a disability or are recently diagnosed with a disability, do not let your disability tell you that one day you will not be able to make a major contribution to a field, to become a famous actor or musician, or even become the President of the United States, because it is through God that all things are possible. So when I was diagnosed with a disability, the doctors said that it would be unlikely that I would graduate from high school and that I might not even talk. And as a result, my mom did not return to the workforce in anticipation that she would have to take care of me for the rest of my life. Although today I am expected to graduate next month, I am regularly either on the dean or the president's list, and I live independently in my dorm and am successfully able to balance my life both socially and academically. So what are some of the challenges living with a disability? Society has tended to underestimate my values. I've been told that I was off or creepy or referred to with slurs. I can occasionally annoy others or push others to the side without realizing or knowing it. And sometimes when I have the courage to tell people I have a disability, they act differently. So this picture here of President Joe Biden and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis basically sums up how I feel in every situation that involves some sort of small talk or some sort of putting myself out there. And that is that I feel uncomfortable because of some of the times in which I have been judged in the past. I'm afraid that I would slip up or embarrass myself, that I would reveal too much information about myself and turn others away. So as a result, I usually tend to withdraw. And in doing so, I feel like I may have missed some opportunities. However, at the same time, I do feel as if it is frustrating because of a lot of the ways in which I communicate and a lot of the misunderstandings that people have had. So how have I found strength in God? As someone who had been rejected from the world, I was able to find solace in His Word. I had felt accepted as my own. I have found rest and restoration from years of being bullied. And I have found that the Gospels have given a unique sense of hope. I generally consider myself to be a nonconformist, and some people may ask themselves, why are you part of a religion like Christianity if it is one of the most conformist religions in the world? And I could see certainly some areas of order, although I have found that a religion that embraces not being with the world, a religion that was centuries ahead in things including gender equality, racial equality, and other goals, as being compatible with the life I have given and very generous in terms of how I have been treated and judged. Currently, right now, I am trying to discover God's will through my life. As graduation quickly approaches, I feel myself at a crossroads of where I am headed and what I want to do with my life. However, I want to know how I can help others, especially those who have gone through my challenges. And a challenge that I am trying to overcome is how to help others in which I may not relate to their story so that they could find acceptance and longing in this world. I've realized through this that I am not alone. I have found others that are similar to me, who have endured similar challenges, and who have added value in my life. And through God, there is no impossible. So what are my goals for the future? I want to keep fighting the good fight. I want to share my testimony of where I was and where I'm going, and I want to continue to overcome adversity that I may face. So what are some of the stigmas that I feel need to be erased? And that is that I feel like disability is nothing to be ashamed of. The world may say that to have a disability, you should hide. The ugly laws, which were around during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, were meant to bring people who disproportionately had disabilities out of the mainstream and hiding because of their physical appearance. And if you have a disability, you could get to the point where you could either have a degree of anxiety or depression or something else, where just struggling to survive is just part of it. You're on survival mode. You're not exactly thinking about how good you look. You just want to get out into the world. And when you have a lot of these challenges and you have these societal expectations and judgments, you can make it really tough. And it is a blessing. I have heard a lot from some people that they consider disability to either be a form of demonic possession or either the sin of the person who has it or the sin of their parents. However, if you look at the Gospels, it actually talks about a time where there was a blind man. They said to the disciples, why is this man blind? What was the sin of his mother? And Jesus said that this person had the disability so that God can shine through him. And I do believe that is very important to remember when talking to people with disabilities, as well as it being an advantage. The people I shared earlier, including Sir Isaac Newton, has really made a lot of contributions to the field of science, as well as Albert Einstein to the field of physics. And I feel as if those people did not have a disability, perhaps they would not have been able to think as thoroughly through a lot of the problems to bring us to the level of scientific awareness that we have today. So what are the lessons I have learned? I've learned to never give up. I've learned to never underestimate myself, and that the right people will come in time. I've been through a lot of struggles and challenges in my life in which I have overcome. Challenges that while I was going through it, I felt unsure. I felt as though there was no way out. But every time I found a way out. And when I was able to find a way out, I was able to look back at myself and talk about the ways in which it seemed impossible at the moment, but that I used that as inspiration for the future. So some of you may be wondering, what can I do? How can I make a difference? And that is a great question. I think certainly to look at them as humans, first off, is great, as well as trying to get to know them, trying to understand exactly what it is that they need to do is essential when it comes to trying to understand. And don't feel as if you cannot do anything. All it takes is one person to make a difference. All it takes is just that one person going out there, making sure that that someone is okay, and that someone is able to, all it takes is just that one person to make sure that they can be met, the person that can be heard and understood. Thank you.
Next up, we have Richmond Obeng, and he is a computer science major, and his speech is titled, "The Unseen Effects of Climate Change in African Developing Countries." Climate change is a topic that is discussed all around the world, primarily among developed countries. But who is talking about the effects it's having on less developed countries? Who is addressing the concerns that needs to be addressed from African countries? Richmond will talk about the effects some of these countries are experiencing. Please welcome to the stage, Richmond.
Good evening to everyone present. There is a famous philosophical question. And the question says, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Take a moment to just think about it. If we have issues happening in places far away from us and no one addresses these issues, who hears about them? I want you to take a moment and be on a journey with me today. Now, imagine yourself in a typical rural African home. Now, you're a child living with a farmer. As you keep growing, this farmer goes to the farm in the month of May to plant his crops. And then in June, July, he goes to harvest it. Now, this farmer spends so much money and so much resources to buy seeds. This farmer spends so much energy to plant these crops. Now, after a couple of years, as you start growing, this farmer goes to the farm in the month of May, only to realize that there was no rain. This happens for the first year. The second year, the farmer just assumes things are going to change. But the third year passes, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and this just continues to happen. Why? This is happening as a result of change, specifically climate change. What am I here to speak to you about? I'm here to speak to you about the unseen effects of climate change on African developing countries. Now, just making reference to the story I just told, imagine yourself being this boy and then this farmer in the house. One night, as both of you are asleep, the neighbors just come in knocking violently on the door. This farmer rushes downstairs, and you as a child, you wake up from bed and you just hide beside the wall, just peeking and watching. The farmer opens the door and the neighbors tell him his farm is on fire. This farmer just falls down and begins to weep. All his efforts, all his resources, just gone. This is the story of farmers in African countries. This is the story of many households in African countries. The effects of climate change are so violent on certain individuals, and sometimes people do not address some of these issues. When this farmer finally is able to put himself together, he rushes to the farm, and you just become silent, just in your corner, and tears begin to flow from your eyes. Because now you begin to ask yourself the questions, how are you going to get fed? Who is going to pay for your school fees? How are you and your siblings going to survive? One may ask the question, well, what is climate change that we're talking about? Well, climate change is the change in the weather condition in a particular place, usually over a long period of time. Now, this change usually occurs not as a result of natural phenomena, but they usually occur as a result of human activities and human interferences. What I'm here to speak to you today about is not the change in the weather condition, But I'm here to speak to you about the effects that this change is causing on some of these countries. I'm here to tell you what exactly is happening in some of these places, the issues that are not being addressed. What is causing these changes? Well, landfills, burning of fossil fuels, deforestation. Fossil fuel from industries contributes so much carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. And then we have the trees. The trees are supposed to take away the excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But what do we see? People cut down these trees in the name of construction. People cut down these trees in the name of development. And after these trees are cut down, no one replants them. So then they're just gone. Landfills. People keep filling landfills with so much waste. Now, landfills contribute a huge amount of methane into the atmosphere. And methane is one of the greenhouse gases that is gradually taking us to the point of the earth heating. Now, just to give you a fair idea of the science behind this, what we're gradually heading to is the greenhouse effect. Now, what is a greenhouse? I'm sure a number of people here know what greenhouse is. Now, greenhouse is a glass building with crops in it. Now, the purpose of this glass is to trap the heat that comes into the greenhouse for the plants to use. We're gradually getting to the point where the earth is becoming a large greenhouse. These gases being released into the atmosphere are gradually blocking the earth, and they're making all the heat that comes from the sun stay in the earth. Once this heat comes into the earth, they have no way of getting out. Why? Because these greenhouse gases have become like a glass all around the earth, keeping all the heat inside the earth. There are so many effects that people are experiencing. First thing, well, in East Africa, there was a drought in the year 2011, where over 13 million people suffered as a result of climate change effects. This is 13 million people, including women, including children, including men, including the old, the young, everyone inclusive. Not only were people affected, but animals also died during this time. This was a time when people did not have access to water. People did not have access to food. And if people don't have access to food, well, obviously animals are also not going to have access to food. This is a time when the land was bare, with no crops. If that was not enough for you, well, in 2005 in Niger, a drought led to food scarcity, affecting over 3.5 million people. That is a single country being affected so greatly. That is children not getting access to food. This is children not getting access to water. This is children not being able to go to school. This is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. This is an issue that needs to be talked about. This is an issue that you can make a difference in. If this is not enough, not only are people suffering, but animals are also bearing the consequences. In Tanzania, we have huge amounts of weather conditions. We have high temperatures in Tanzania that are gradually leading to the high mortality rates in elephants. If huge animals like elephants are suffering the consequences, if huge animals like elephants are gradually dying, then obviously the smaller species are also dying. The smaller species are also being taken away. I will not hesitate to make the statement that some species may have gone extinct as a result of this heat. Because if animals like elephants are dying, then obviously the smaller creatures are at more risk. These are issues that need to be addressed. One might say, well, African countries are to be blamed for the effects they're experiencing. Well, I stand here to tell you that African countries are not to be blamed for what they're experiencing. Why do I say that? Well, according to the latest data from Global Carbon Atlas, it says that African countries only contribute 3.8% of the carbon dioxide that is released globally. And then we have countries like the United States and China, which contributes about 43% of some of these gases. Just to give you a general picture of what I'm talking about, this is a picture showing the carbon dioxide emission from the various parts of the world. We can clearly see from this image that countries in the European countries or other continents aside Africa produce huge amounts of carbon dioxide as compared to the African continent. And this is very interesting because people might say, well, African countries to some extent also contribute a small amount. But that is not what we're talking about. African countries do not even have the needed resources to produce some of these gases because they end up using their resources to clean up after the effects of climate change. They end up using their resources to feed people who have been affected by climate change. And so the countries are in a state of developing, and they never move from developing to developed. Why? Because their resources are never used to develop their country. Their resources are always used to help people. Their resources are always used to clean up after climate change effects. This is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. This is an issue that needs to be talked about. Just to give you a clearer picture, the various industries like transportation, electricity generation, industries, agriculture, yes, agriculture, and some commercial industries release significant amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere. Which gases am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about fluorinated gases. I'm talking about nitrate oxide. I'm talking about methane. And in huge amounts, I'm talking about carbon dioxide. These gases are gradually getting us to the point where the earth would become a large greenhouse. And the countries who do not have the resources are the ones struggling the most. The countries that do not have the needed resources to help their people are struggling a lot. The countries that do not have the resources to talk about these issues are struggling a lot. Whereas the bigger countries are talking about the issues, but then in their own country are not being concerned about what their actions are causing in other places. Now, what do you think you can do about it? Well, reduce energy consumption. Reduce the amount of electricity you use. Reduce water consumption. Choose sustainable transport. Choose renewable energy. Reduce waste and recycle. Now, people may not see the effects of recycling, but the little bottle that you drop in the recycling bin can go a long way to reduce the amount of waste that is found in landfills. Like I mentioned earlier, landfills contribute a huge amount of methane into the atmosphere. And recycling goes a long way to help this. Recycling goes a long way to make things better. And last but not the least, eat plant-based diets. Some people may not fancy Gordon's Meatless Monday. I personally did not fancy it so much either. But after coming to some of these things, I realized that even though it may be a very small thing, it's significantly making a big difference. Because like I mentioned, agriculture also contributes a huge part in releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And even though it may be in a small community, it's gradually making a difference in the world. You might ask, why then should I care about this? Well, in Genesis 1:26, it says, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Why? You should care because it's your responsibility. You should care because it's what you were charged with. You were charged with this responsibility right from the beginning of time. The things that may be happening in places that you think are so far away from you. But they're not so far. It is your responsibility to make some of these things right. It's your responsibility to care about these things. What am I saying this evening? Well, I'm charging you this evening to go out and make a difference. I'm charging you this evening to go out there and make the little things you do count. Even though you might not feel like the little things you do makes a difference, it goes a long way to make an impact. It goes a long way to make a difference. It goes a long way to help you in keeping your charge as a Christian. And so go out there and make a difference and make the world a better place. Thank you.
Finally, we have Crisana Speer. She studies communication arts, theater, and digital media, and will give her talk Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, a movement from body positivity to body neutrality. We live in a body-focused culture, but what would happen if we shifted our mindset to be more inwardly focused than outwardly focused? In her speech, she will explore just how much more authentic our world would be if we changed the narrative of body love all the time to body acceptance as it is in its most natural form. Please welcome to the stage.
Good evening. Look at the person next to you. Look at the other person next to you. How would you describe them? What color shoes are they wearing? What color shirt? What color is their skin? Do they have acne that they didn't notice in the mirror that day? What about their eyes? Look at their eyes. Look deep into those eyes. Now think about yourself. How many times have you looked in the mirror today and thought about something you might rather change? How many times have you looked in the mirror and thought about something you adored? Do you realize that throughout all of my questioning, you never once considered what yourself or the other person might be like on the inside? Now, that's no fault of your own because we live in a body-centered culture. However, due to the ever-changing societal beauty standards, the increasing diagnoses of mental health issues linked to obesity, and the amount of autoimmune diseases that contribute to weight gain, we can conclude we should be promoting a bodily lifestyle that suits your body best. Today I'm going to be talking to you about things like body positivity, body neutrality, those two very similar sounding concepts. I'm going to talk to you about the outside factors linked to obesity, and then as Christians, we should analyze what our response should be. But what is body positivity, Crisana? Positivity is good. Why would you ever want to move away from something positive? We're such a negative culture. We need positivity, right? Wrong. Body positivity was founded in 1969 by a man named Bill Fabry. His wife, Joyce, was overweight, and being the loving, adoring husband he was, he hated the treatment she was getting. So he founded the National Association to Aid Fat Americans. My men in the audience, step it up. Flowers for Valentine's Day are no longer enough. Start foundations for us. Yes, you get it. The movement, as soon as it hit social media, it spread like wildfire, especially Instagram. As soon as it hit Instagram, it just flames went up. And its goal was to liberate fat people from the prejudices they were facing from the outside world. It provided a new perspective into the often ignored and underrepresented in our communities. However, just as many positives, we're actually going to talk about this positives first, haha. It had really good intentions to end the orthodox and traditional views of what a body should look like. It increased the self-esteem of so many worldwide. When you keep telling people they're pretty, they're going to believe it. And then it gave the voice to the often ignored. It allowed for a new perspective. Just as many positives as there were actually more negatives. As soon as it hit Instagram, no matter what it started as, it became entirely vanity-driven. It became all about promoting bodily image rather than mental or spiritual well-being. It gave profit to companies that exploited the movement. This is Louise Thompson. She's a British reality TV star promoting her book Body Positivity while displaying her six-pack on the cover. It created excuses for unhealthy lifestyles. The narrative became, whatever you want to do, just do that, when in actuality, that may not be the case. And it actually ended up becoming toxically positive. If you didn't love your body 100% of the time, shame on you. It became non-inclusive. It shamed underweight or skinny people simply for being skinny, when in actuality, just because someone is skinny, it doesn't mean they're healthy. In my research that I was doing, I came across this quote by Davika Shenoy of the Jewel Review. No one can love their body all the time. It's impossible. Constantly pressing the notion of body love can cause immense guilt when not doing so. It puts immense pressure on people by chalking out an idealistic state, which is contrary to the cause of the movement, which is to break ideals. The body positive movement became an oxymoron. People were forced to love their body so much, they ended up hating it even more because they just couldn't love it. Now let's talk about body neutrality. How many of you, this is the first time you've ever heard of this concept? Perfect. Good. You remember when I had you analyze the people next to you? Would you ever say this about them? These were all comments made to me. Some of these I was defending myself or another fat person on Instagram or other social medias. Others were made in conversations that had nothing to do with weight at all. This one was made in a conversation about faith, about religion, and I was targeted because of my body. The body positive movement has been around for half a century, and it has done nothing to end the prejudices or trials that fat people are put through on a day-to-day basis. This proves that the body positivity movement is doing nothing for our society. Body neutrality is a shift in perspective from body hatred or body love to acceptance as it is in its most neutral state when you're sitting on the couch eating popcorn, loving your body for all its rolls and curves in that moment. Body neutrality promotes body acceptance. You're not trying to love or hate it at any given moment, but just embracing it as it is. It's decreased pressure. It's based on your own personal journey rather than, trying to compete with other people. There's a togetherness with body neutrality. It encourages healthy living. It promotes healthy recovery methods for those who choose to do so. That might mean if you're underweight, eating protein-packed foods or building muscle. If you're overweight, that could mean eating low sodium or doing more cardio. And it's an internal change rather than external. When you heal the internal, the exterior naturally follows. There are a couple negatives that people have come up when discussing the body neutrality movement. The main one being that it's considered a healing practice rather than trying to curb any prejudice or trials people are going through. When in actuality, when you change the cultural mindset, society's words have a lot harder time trying to reach you. When you all become so neutral, nobody cares what you look like anymore. The second problem they came across was that it doesn't embrace bodily imperfections. I say that's a lie, and it's the other way around. In order to be neutral, you have to embrace all the imperfections that come along with it. You have to embrace your rolls, your curves, your acne that you might have forgotten about in the random pimple that pops up on your forehead when you least want it to. Author Eleanor Clark puts it this way: maybe the solution to body image is not the innate belief in our attractiveness, but rather to move beyond a position of body emphasis at all. How much more authentic could this world be if we all just didn't care what each other looked like? What if we focused on the interior, what really matters? How much more authentic would this world become? How much more fun would social media be? I was waiting for that to happen. So the words overweight and obese are thrown around all too often in our society. So what do they actually mean? The National Institute for Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Diseases defines obesity as a person whose weight is higher than what is considered to be a normal weight for a given height. It's more about how tall you are than the number on the scale. So for the people who think that anything over 120 pounds is overweight, you're wrong. In America, 30.7%, that's 1 in 3 adults, are overweight, meaning that your BMI is between the 25 and 29.9 range. More than 2 in 5 adults have obesity, meaning that your BMI is between 30 and 40. And about 1 in 11 have severe obesity, meaning that your BMI is 40 or above, or you're 100 plus pounds overweight. Now in youths ages 2 to 19, about 1 in 6 are overweight. 1 in 5 have obesity, and then 1 in 16 have severe obesity. That is not to say these people are just sitting around, lounging around, eating pizza all day. Chances are you know one of us. It's actually been proven that in cases of enduring mental health issues, people are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop obesity, overweight, or similar problems, including heart disease or diabetes. In 50% of women and 41% of men, obesity was more prevalent with a serious mental illness. Now, why is this? Because sometimes when you have things like depression, bipolar, anxiety, it's the most you can do to just survive. It's the most that you can do to just crawl out of bed and get through the day, and sometimes your appearance has to take second place. Now, there was a study done worldwide that found that 35% of the global population was overweight or obese. To put it this way, that was 2,800,000,000 people. That is an astounding number of people. And when researching why, they found that nearly 10 autoimmune diseases are linked to obesity. Things like Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's, celiac. They're all linked to weight gain and weight fluctuations. Now, no matter what society says or what all of those studies that I just talked about say, as Christians, the only voice we should be listening to is God's. So what does God say? There's a common misconception among Christians that fat people are just sinners and gluttonous because the body's a temple and they obviously don't care about theirs, so, I'm better than them. There's a couple problems with this statement. First being that this insinuates that fat people don't care that they're fat. As a resident fat person, I can assure you that is not true. In fact, chances are that we care more that we're fat than you ever will. Because at the end of the day, these are our bodies being stigmatized. I can't go back to my dorm and take this body off. I have to live in this body 24/7, and those comments that you just read were made to me, made about me, and are still being made to me. Every day a new one pops up. The second problem with this is that it insinuates that God cares what you look like on the outside. God does not care what you look like on the outside. God focuses on what really matters, your heart and your soul. Okay, keep going. So what does God say? God says beauty comes from the heart. God says that we are God's handiwork. Who are you to say that God created something ugly or not deserving of love? We are created in God's image. If you've taken Dr. Hughes' Christian theology class, you know that we are all the imago Dei, and you can't split up the parts of God. So that means that fat people are made in the image of God too. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that we are altogether beautiful, even the parts of us we might not like so much. Society's beauty standards are always changing. So as Christians, it's our job to love and be grateful. Love one another and be grateful that the body that God has given us does what our body is supposed to do. Our hearts beat, our lungs breathe, and our eyes see the beautiful world God has given us. At the beginning of this speech, I had you look around at the people next to you. And I want you to look back at them and say these words. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Remember, when God created you, you were very good. Don't discredit God for his wonderful creation. Thank you.
Can we give it up for all of our speakers one more time tonight?
All right, now we will release our judges to their deliberation. And if you want to put up the QR code, scan this and vote for your favorite speaker tonight. While they do that and you do that, I would like you guys to please come up to the stage once more. And please also be thinking of some questions to ask these lovely speakers.
So we are going to move into a time of Q&A. So if you guys want to, you can pull the chairs up to the middle. If y'all want to pull the seats up to the middle so that we can get a more central view of all y'all. Yes, so if you guys have any Q&As, be thinking about any questions you want to ask our speakers. That can be just in general for everyone or for any of the specific talks that the speaker made. I'm sure that they'd be happy to answer your questions. So while you're all thinking of your question, I will start us off by just asking, how are y'all doing? How do you feel? You guys all just did a speech. Give us your thoughts. Yeah. Free to pass around the microphone or...
I can take it. Oh, great. I think it's on. I was just talking. You can keep hearing my voice. I've been planning this speech for years, so I'm very happy that y'all listened to me, and I'm very happy it's done, so thank you for being so responsive.
I have never in my life done anything like this, and I really thought I was just going to get up here and forget everything, so through the grace of God, I was able to do it, and I'm very grateful. This is living testimony that through God you can do anything, so...
I wish I could go to the mall without needing a ride from a friend.
My speech was basically inspired by my TGC class. Yeah, so, yeah. I just feel like I hope people actually take it and actually make a difference with it. Yeah, thank you.
So a personal goal of mine for a while was to put myself out there more and to take risks and chances. And I feel like tonight was the perfect opportunity to practice that because for the longest time, I was really ashamed and not comfortable to share a lot of what I shared tonight. So I think just to get out there in front of an audience was really meaningful in a lot of ways.
All right, so let's start with some questions. Who's got a question for our speakers for tonight? You can just raise your hand and we'll come around and get a microphone to you. I know it's hard to be the first one. Oh, there you go. I'm coming.
Yes. Go, Nick, go.
I know that, Crisana, you said you've been planning this speech for years. I just wanted to ask, everyone or whoever wanted to answer, how much, time and effort you put into these, because these are really well done. I just want to say, everyone, you did a great job, and, yeah, it must have taken so much planning and effort?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about doing this speech for years, but I didn't really do it until the night before the auditions. And I put my entire presentation together in one night, #procrastinating. And it worked. But I've spent probably 20, 30 plus hours refining my speech and writing out and memorizing and all of that. And I've spent at least 2 or 3 hours with Dr. Underation just running it and working through it. And the speech that he saw was nothing like y'all saw. So it was work in progress, but that's just me.
Okay. Should I answer or is someone else?
It's all you, friend.
Yeah, so it took a village for me. I see my friends over here in the audience. I love you guys. It really took so many people and my wonderful coach Rachel to put it together. So several hours, having an hour and a half coaching every week, and countless nights of friends. Can you listen to my speech, please? Can you tell me what's wrong with it? So I couldn't have done it without other people. And their time, what you saw that I did, it was so many more people than me. I couldn't have done it without the help of the people who love me. So.
I think I spent maybe, I've been thinking about this topic, walkability, urban spaces, car-centric infrastructure, for about as long as I've been here as a student, so about the past 2 years. But actually putting the speech together, I think, was roughly about 15 to 20 hours between putting together the slides, writing the speech, and then practicing it. Maybe a little over 20 hours total.
I would say I cannot exactly tell the amount of time I put in it, because, computer science students, there's just a lot. If you're a computer science student, you would understand. There's just so much going on in your college life. But then the particular issue, like I mentioned earlier, came from my TGC class, which I took last semester. So it's something I've been thinking about since last semester. Yeah.
I don't really know a particular set of time either, but I know that Rachel really did a great job in coaching me and sort of just guiding in the direction, because I had a lot of information that I could have shared, but just sort of to limit and narrow and pick what I think was the most important was the hardest part, other than to be up here tonight. But I think just putting all the work together and sort of putting it in was, it was challenging to look at it and see what I felt like needed to be there or did not need to be there. But it was just a lot of looking over it and trimming that I think was important.
Hello. Oh, wonderful. And what was your name?
I'm Dean.
Dean, thank you for the question. All right, next, who has another question? Okay, right here. And what's your name?
Michael. All right, so this one can be for anyone. It doesn't have to be for everyone. So I know I went to a business academy in high school, and public speaking was something we practiced quite often, speeches like this. So I was just curious what your guys' background was or experience in public speaking.
I've made speeches before, and I've taken a public speaking class in the past, but I don't have a ton of experience in there, other than the few speeches I made. But I think that tonight was really a milestone when it comes to going out there and sharing and being confident in the moment as well.
Am I supposed to answer? All right. I could say I have some public speaking background. From middle school through to high school, I did a lot of public speaking, a lot of debates. So that's pretty much, I've had a pretty good public speaking background. So yeah.
I did musical theater all throughout middle and high school, and I also was engaged in debate tournaments between, I think, 8th and 11th grade.
Yeah, so I did 3 student council, like, what do you call that? Campaign speeches? Yeah, and then I did 1 little silly play in middle school when I was an 8th grader. So beyond that, nothing.
I was the nerd. I did academic UIL in modern oratory and public speaking all throughout middle school and part of high school. So I had that. I got my public speaking badge in Girl Scouts. Yeah, was one of the many. And then I did public speaking last year with Dr. Yu. And I don't know, I just talk all the time publicly. So I guess that counts.
Thank you. Okay, let's go. Boom. Okay, what's your name?
My name is Aaron. Hello, and you all are very articulate. I am proud of the 5 of you. This question is specifically for Crisana. You recently released a short film, if I'm not mistaken. Y'all should check it out. It's very good. And I am just wondering if you could speak to how this speech and maybe that short film blend creatively.
Yeah, so I mentioned in my speech about when fat people don't care about their fat, and how I care probably more than anyone else does because it's my body, it's my life. I released a short film last semester called The Big One, based entirely on my own experience, minus the ending because she got a happily ever after, and I haven't reached that point yet. I mean, I'm still living my life. But both of this speech and that short film are my life, and I'm very passionate about it because I don't think people realize what I go through on a daily basis. The comments that y'all saw in my speech were just like part of the story. I have folders upon folders of screenshots of things that people have said to me, and I have dozens of memories. I was bullied all throughout middle school, all throughout high school, basically always told that no one would ever love me because I'm fat, and I never wanted anyone else to feel that way, so I released The Big One, and I gave her a happy ending so that little girls around the world who may be told that same thing have a different role model to look to understand that their weight doesn't define them, and that they don't ever need to feel like they're unlovable because they're loved by God Most High. So it's all my experience, much like William's, where it's about, living with an invisible disability. It's living as a fat person. Like I said, I can't ever take off my body, and people are just going to have to adjust to the fact that I don't always want to appeal to what they want because I'm happy in my own body and I'm proud of myself for being where I am.
So there's What's your name? Oh, I'm Q. Hi. There's prize money if you win. What do you want to do with the prize?
That's a great question.
Get a tattoo.
Get myself out of my crippling debt.
Pay my taxes.
Expensive Gordon tuition.
My gut's telling me that I really should invest because of to save up because of how expensive things are. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try not to go with my instinct and just impulsively spend. So we'll have to see.
I hate all of you for those answers. It's a tattoo. You're honest.
So you guys did so good. I literally am almost crying over here. I'm a proud mom, even though I'm not a mother to any of you guys. My question would be, because I know we're just college kids, and which is a great deal of awesome sometimes. But if you had if you had to allow us to do one thing, or if you would employ us to do one thing based on your speeches today that we could continuously do for the rest of the semester, what would that be based off your topic that you spoke to us about?
I guess since I have the mic, I go first. If there's anything I would want you to take from my speech, is to just be aware of the fact that climate change is actually affecting people in numerous ways that we cannot see. And the little things that you can do, like turning off the lights when you're leaving your room, like not wasting the tap when you open it, just using what you want to use. These little things that you do actually makes a big difference. And that's just what I want people to know. Because some people just think it's about big things, but then sometimes the little things that you actually do goes a long way to make a big difference.
So I forgot to mention this during my speech, but I am on the leadership for a group on campus called CAIM, C-A-I-M. Some of you might have heard of it. We did Living with Disabilities Week a few weeks ago. And I would say more just trying to be involved through there. We are already discussing some things for the fall that I really can't talk about yet, but I'm very excited for the group and really looking forward to just seeing the group grow as well as in awareness and some of the things in which they're able to do.
I would say that the issue with walkability in neighborhoods and communities is that there basically really isn't anything that you can do as an individual, right? Like, yeah, you can cycle instead of taking a car or whatever, but if the space that you live in literally is physically, like, if it's infeasible for you to actually make the sustainable steps to be able to, you know, to reduce your car use or whatever, it's really, there's nothing that you can do as an individual. So the slightly more boring answer, and this only applies if you actually believe in democracy and the bureaucracy that we live in. But the answer that I would say, it really is, you have to demand that your representatives actually represent your interests, right? And so I perhaps am too much of a cynic to answer this question directly, but email, call your representatives anytime that there's a bill to reform the zoning laws of wherever you live. You know, tell them that you're in support of this decision. Be loud about it. Make sure that people are aware, and it's the issue of the fact that our urban environments really do need to be built for humans is much more broadly known.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say for an organization on campus that you can do, go to Common Exchange, get some stuff from there, donate some stuff from there, teach yourself how to sew and mend your socks that have that hole in it that you've left for like 6 years, and just realize that no matter what you own, no matter what you put on your body, like you're still so valued and loved by God, and nothing's ever going to change that. And you don't ever have to be trapped in this capitalist like society where people deem you have to look a certain way, you have to wear this, you have to have the Gucci bag, you have to do this or that to be loved. You are perfect, like Crisana said, beautifully and wonderfully made. That never will change. So
y'all aren't gonna like me for my answer because I want y'all to actually do it. 1, be mindful of what you say. 2, be mindful of what you think. 3, if you've ever said something about someone's weight, go apologize to them. And don't expect forgiveness. Like I mentioned, I was bullied all throughout middle and high school for my weight. And the amount of times that it was just like, I just wish one person would apologize for something they said. So y'all aren't going to like that, and you might not do it. But, I mean, that's what I would say that I would want you to do. And maybe you don't remember things you've said, and I can't blame you for not remembering it, because sometimes it's just a passing comment. But that's that's what leads into, like, thinking about what you think. And thinking about what you say before you say it, because a passing comment to you might be the end of the world to someone else. It's directly linked to, many mental health crises all over the country. So just be mindful of who you're talking to and what you're thinking. He looked like a crab.
My name is Mario, and this question is for Michelle. I'm really a big fan of walkable cities. I think, just like it really sucks that I have to take an Uber or like get like a friend to drive me to Buffalo Wild Wings, you know. So like, what do you think is and you kind of already talked about this, but maybe I would like you to talk more about it. What's like the economic and like political feasibility of like reforming, you know, zoning laws and these kinds of things that make, you know, it make public, you know, property more human centered, right? Because I imagine that like there are a lot of vested interests that are going to say, well, no, I mean, you're affecting, you know, car companies and stuff like that, and it's a very competitive market, right? So.
Right, and this kind of gets to the heart of the fact that, you know, we live in a society dominated by extremely powerful and really deeply rooted systems. And here's the really fascinating thing, and I didn't get into this, but basically, American-style low-density suburbs are making America's cities bankrupt. So you know how I talked about the big box stores and how they cost more to maintain than they bring in? Same goes for suburban housing. The way that governments basically divide up land for development, it functions sort of like a subsidy, right? It's it's a literal subsidy too, because during the 1960s and 50s, when highways and these suburban expansion really took off, the government really was literally paying for a lot of these developments. And the issue with them is that they're completely unsustainable. Like, if we're talking long term, like the country has no choice but to change the way that it designs its cities, because it's bleeding cities dry. You cannot cover like several hundred square miles with just single family houses, right? Think about the amount of waste that generates, the wastewater, the electricity, the heating. Like, think about all the infrastructure maintenance that goes into those enormous costs. So now the question of, well, how do we do anything about that? And especially when we're competing with the interests of real estate developers, when we're competing with the interests of big car, the answer is, I don't know, and I'm very scared to find out what will happen when we have to make that decision. Because like a lot of vested business interests, they are not made with all of the stakeholders in mind. It's made purely for short-term profit over long-run feasibility. So what I will say, though, is that this is really fascinating. I didn't talk a lot about other countries in my speech, but a lot of the cities that we think of today that exist in Europe, that we think of as like walkable havens, didn't always used to be that way. So Amsterdam in the 80s, well, before the 80s, was very much following an American model of urban development, where they built all the highways, they didn't have any bike lanes, wide roads, all cars, right? You can look at pictures from Amsterdam in the 80s and it doesn't look anything like it does today. Because today, when you have Amsterdam, when you think of the Netherlands, right, you think of the fact that it has the longest bike path network in the world, right? They have like bike highways across the entire country. Didn't always used to be that way. And so just like how a lot of American political reform kind of happens at a state-by-state level, just because the country is just so huge, I think there is absolutely a case to be made that small-scale change is possible, perhaps at the state level. That's why the country was designed. That's why we have states. And so I think if there is a glimmer of hope, it has to be from the local level, and it has to build from the ground up. Now, what happens when we get to the really big battles of the vested business interests? We'll have to find out.
Time for one more question.
Mine isn't as important, but what tattoo do you want to get?
Oh, there's a list. The one that I want probably the most would be a semicolon butterfly behind my ear.
A quick one.
A semicolon butterfly, my friend.
Okay, I guess one final question before we find out who the winners are. If you were to do a JUD talk on a subject you did not talk about tonight, what would you have talked about instead? And if you don't have an answer, it's okay. Looks like Crisana might have an answer.
Yeah, go first.
This was my backup plan, and it was women's role in the church.
You can tell I like controversy.
I probably have talked about like what it's like to be a trauma survivor and how that intersects with Christianity and how to live in today's world when you have some from your past and how that informs your being. So.
My initial plan actually before I switched to this topic was I wanted to discuss the way that our media consumption patterns not only impact on us on a psychological level, but also become the vehicles through which we define ourselves. So kind of like how Anne pointed out that we have a really consumption-driven society. And it's not just material things too, it's also like the music that we listen to, the TV shows that we watch, and the way that we construct identities and then we create profiles of ourselves based on the things that we like to buy and consume, and how that in some ways is not like, it's not that we live in a society of narcissists, right? There's this common idea that millennials and Gen Z are just self-obsessed people, and I don't think that's true. It's just that the way that we come to understand ourselves is much more heavily oriented around how people perceive us based on what we consume. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're all narcissists, although that may manifest in symptoms that people who didn't have that kind of pressure growing up might perceive to be narcissism.
I think if I had a chance to speak on something else, it would most definitely be where the world is currently heading to with artificial intelligence.
I would talk about how God took someone who was very bitter, vindictive, and paranoid and angry, and how through his love, because of a lot of the trauma I'd gone through, he transformed it into the person I'd always wanted to be.
A little more time than we thought. So I have a question for the audience, and feel free to shout it out. If any of you would want to give a JUD talk on something, what would be the subject? Okay, Q, what is it?
I actually almost submitted one for this year about controversial Christianity in the world today and how Christians of many different perspectives have given what some might call a bad reputation for Christians in the world, and how that influences non-believers' views of us, specifically as it applies to Gordon.
Any other ideas? Yeah, Abby?
So I applied twice, took mine out twice, and then, because I, ADHD, which is what I was going to talk about, was, I was going to talk about, I was going to talk about, like, kind of neurodiversity, and how we kind of make these claims that, I get that they have this, but that's no excuse.
Awesome. Well, that was really great to hear. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Question with the Bible.
Well, that does sound like a good one. So if you want to apply for the 2024 JUD Talks, or if any of you have any ideas that you're thinking about now, or any ideas that you were inspired by our contestants, talk to Dr. Gardner or Dr. Underation after tonight in our reception if you want to consider talking next year. But I think we've said enough, so I think it's time that we announce our winners, perhaps? Yes?
This on? Are you ready? Okay.
Yep, so we are going to announce third place, second place, first place, and then the People's Choice Awards. So.
All right, in third place, we have Richmond Obeng, The Unseen Effects of Climate Change in African Developing Countries.
All right. In second place, we have Michel Bayarjargal with Cars Are Not Good for Cities. plot twist, we're actually going to announce, do you want first place or audience choice? First place?
I have it. I have one right here. First place. Can I have a drum roll? I don't know. Classic. Crisana Speer. And do you want to do this one?
Yeah, Audience Choice Awards. So the speech that you all enjoyed the most was Crisana Speer with Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. Just like the Olympics, you ready?
Continuing the tradition of first place and audience choice, same award.
Yes. All right, and that,
We do have some others.
oh, we have more, all right. Oh, what she got? What she got? She got, yes. All right, cool. Well, that concludes our evening. We're just going to have the contestants stay up here for a few quick photos, but we invite you to join us out in the lobby for refreshments. So please eat food, take food home, and stick around to talk with all the contestants. So yeah, we thank you for coming and have a wonderful night.